I had that money, yeah. I mean, I saw
ridiculous. I thought you were
some of the seats were like 27,000. I was like, goodness gracious. I'm not even gonna afford that.
We really expanded our family for the wireless savings. Then my sister told me about Visible.
Get unlimited data for as low as $25 a month. No family needed.
Okay. That's okay, does anybody have any questions before we start? So you all looked like you nailed the test. So that was nice to see. We'll see, I haven't graded them yet, but I was assuming you guys look like you did pretty good. But sometimes us economists make too many assumptions. Okay, so what we're going to do today is wrap up this chapter on cost curves. And then we've got a special topic on resource exhaustion. So I've got a video to motivate some of those ideas, so we'll get into that. And then we might be dipping our toe into what we'll be getting into next week, which all of this stuff builds on itself. So it's good to keep it rolling right away. So just to dust off, since we had the test in between here, so we have some different cost curves. And which cost curve is the most important one? Which one is the most important one? So we had the average total cost, and the average variable cost, and the average fixed cost, and then the marginal cost. All these different ones we spent some time doing. Which one do you think is the most important? What's that, Jay?
Total cost.
Total cost? And total cost would be another one. So you're talking about this one, average total cost?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So average total cost is important when you're calculating profits, right? So what is the profit equation? Profit equals total revenue minus total cost. And so average total cost is definitely important in this equation, and of course profit maximization is important. What's the formula for total revenue?
Quantity times price.
Quantity times price. I'm just going to put price times quantity, right? So price per unit times the number of units sold. So if I sold 50 units at a couple bucks a piece, $2 times 50 units means I've got $100 in the cash register, right? Minus average or total cost can be thought of as putting it in the average per unit as well. So average total cost times quantity. So if each one of those $2 units cost me $1.50, then my total cost would be $1.50 times 50, right? So it's kind of doing the same thing on a per unit basis, which makes it kind of nice. And then another little thing we want to do, what can you do when there's two variables in here? How can we change around this expression? We got a Q here and a Q here. It's this thing minus this thing. What can we do in math class when we got an argument in two spots like that? Square it as if we were having a multiplication. So if it was Q times Q equals Q squared. So here with the addition, what can we do? Sienna? Cancel? Well, I don't want to cancel them. What do I need to do? Who remembers that? What'd you say, Sienna? Multiply? Well, I'm thinking of a word that's called factors, since we talk about the factors of production. What does it mean to factor out something? The common factor we can pull out. So if we think of this expression maybe with parentheses, kind of helps us see it a little bit more. Can I pull this Q out of the parentheses? Please let me see more head shaking. Just please, yes. Remember that from math class? All right, so that's called factoring something out. So here, I'm going to put the Q on the backside, but we can rewrite this as price minus average total cost times quantity. Remember, to solve this equation, whatever's in the parentheses with the plus sign or minus sign, you got to distribute it back through, right? So it's quantity times average total cost gets you back to here, and then you distribute it through to here, gets you back to here. Now, why is this nice is that now we can kind of see the profit equation a little bit differently, that it's the difference between the sale price per unit and the average cost per unit. Using the numbers I just kind of made up, $2 minus $1.50 means I'm making on average 50 cents per unit, right? And then if I'm making 50 cents per unit on 100 units, then I've got $50 of profit, not just revenue. Okay, questions there? So this is a nice way to think about profits, and that's why that one would be important. But I don't think for econ class that's the most important cost curve, to kind of circle back to my original question. It is definitely, all of these are important in different ways, but the most important one, Jay, give me a number between 3 and 12.
7.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Anna, what's your next choice here? Marginal cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost. Jay's already picked this one, so that one's out of the question here. So those three, which one do you think is the most important for economics class?
Marginal cost.
Marginal cost. Bingo, bingo, bing, 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 bing. So all of those decisions are made at the margin, right? That was in chapter 2, 1, 2, 3, early on. The whole economic way of thinking is to say, here I am today, here's the status quo. What if I take one step to the right? Oh, well, that's fine. What's the marginal benefit of me stepping to the right? Oh, I'm going to get free this and that. If I sign up for this, I'm going to get all this and that, right? All the benefits that you're going to get. Could be monetary, could be non-monetary, right? Well, whatever those benefits of stepping to the right. But then what's the cost of stepping to the right? Oh, well, I'm going to have to travel here. It's going to cost me $30. So I add up all the costs. And basically, if the benefits of stepping to the right are greater than the cost of stepping to the right, step to the right. But if the costs of stepping to the right are bigger than the benefits of stepping to the right, don't freaking step to the right. That's the decision you guys make every day. You might not even think about it or internalize it, but the more you formalize it with the economic way of thinking, the better thinker you'll be. Did you brush your teeth this morning? Okay, why? Because you're in a routine. She brushes them every morning. But really, why? Why do we brush our teeth?
We want our breath to stink.
We don't want our breath to stink, okay? And Justice, anything personally from you?
I like having fresh.
Okay, fresh taste in your mouth. I can buy that. What else? Why do you guys brush your teeth? How many people don't brush their teeth? Okay, that's why I picked brush your teeth. I'm hoping that most of you haven't ran into a perennial teeth brusher. So everybody come up with a reason here. Why do you brush your teeth? Emily? What's that? It's a routine, I have to. Okay, so let's just break through that though. Why did you buy into that routine early on? What does it get you? What does it do for you? Okay, just on breath. David? What's that? Smile on your pictures. Okay, good. Smile on your pictures. Jay? Brushing your teeth. Yeah, why do you brush your teeth in the morning? The breath, okay. That's what you said? Deontay? Deontay, brushing your teeth, what's up? To not be dirty. Breath. Escape mama's whoopings. That's a good one. Breath. So, I didn't hear one person say the real reason. Did you guys know that brushing teeth is not a breath freshener? It's not like a substitute for gum? Why do you frickin' brush your teeth?
Kill bacteria.
Bacteria and? Where do you not have to go as often to get fillings? The freaking dentist! Gosh, that's another. You guys surprised? You guys never. I've been doing this for 30 years. You never cease to amaze me. Like the primary thing is to protect your teeth, and so you don't get cavities. And yes, it's bacteria, but you guys have turned it into a breath freshener somehow. But whatever. I mean, I'm not disagreeing that that's not a benefit of it. But the primary reason is to probably avoid the dentist and some expensive fillings that you might have to have too, right? Breath freshening is great, but you could also do mouthwash, for instance, might do the breath freshening, or maybe some Orbit's gum or something. Could be a substitute for breath freshener. So I didn't think this was going to turn into a hygiene lesson, personal hygiene lesson today, but I want you guys to write in your notes that I brush my teeth to avoid the dentist, right? To not have cavities. So why brush my teeth? So number one, avoid the dentist and cavities so that you have teeth when you're 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 years old. Number two, I totally agree with you. The fresh breath is fine, but I don't think it's number one. All right. I love the Jensen's avoid mom's wrath. Whoopings, I think he said, but let's just say wrath here. All right, so we all have different reasons that might have motivated us, and that's maybe part of why it's been routine. So multiple of you just said, I have to do it, like you get into habits, which is good, but it's also good to not forget the habits. Okay, so, I'm not trying to embarrass you at all, but did anybody not brush their teeth this morning before class?
Be honest.
That's cool. Jensen, because mom's not here to whoop you, right? You're at college, so that works out good. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Now, this is important. Jensen, why didn't you brush your teeth?
Well, I was in a rush and I was late for class.
I thought so. Yeah, I noticed that you came in late. So this placed in perfectly actually to me. So now, because Jensen didn't brush his teeth this morning, is he going to for sure get cavities and have to go to the dentist for missing one morning of brushing? No. Maybe we put Caitlin's a little close there, but maybe the breath fresh thing, but maybe that's not too awful. Sometimes it's not too bad, right? And again, this one went away because he's not at home. So my point in all that is the decision of whether to brush your teeth in the morning is a marginal one. It's a marginal benefit, marginal cost. So what is the marginal benefit of teeth brushing, versus the marginal cost of brushing? And when we're looking at this, let's look at today. Jensen wasn't making the decision of whether he's going to brush his teeth for the rest of his life or for the next month or for the next year. It was today, in the moment, at the margin, right? At the margin today, should he brush his teeth, should he not brush his teeth? And so what's the marginal benefit of brushing? You know, 0.00000000000000001 of giving a cavity, which might be a $200 cost to him in the future. So basically, there's basically no risk of him getting a cavity off missing 1 day of brushing, right? And then we already said he's not going to have to report to mom unless he's feeling guilty or something. He can text her after class and let her know. And then maybe he'll get a couple of weird looks, like all of a sudden Kalen's like turning his chair a little bit, or maybe Janai and Kennedy are like, oh, let's scoop this chair up a little bit, right? So there might be some shame or embarrassment or something. But what's the likelihood of that? Pretty small. Now what about here? What was the marginal cost of brushing? If he took the time to brush, he'd be later. Does it make a difference if he's, if he can squeeze another minute in or not? Does McCullough notice things like that? Maybe. He's been pretty good about being on time. I do pay attention to those who kind of trickle in late all the time. And so to not be on the professor's mind about being late, maybe disrupting class as you come in, I think it's likely that the cost of brushing this morning, for him who's normally on time, the cost of brushing this morning was greater than the benefits of brushing. So he didn't brush. You're being very efficient, Jensen. I applaud you. Economic efficiency right there in teeth brushing. Every decision in life can be done this way. This is definitely, for economics class, the absolute most important. I want to do a different color here. Let's do green. This is the one. Econ lives here at the margin. We want you guys to become good, efficient decision makers by employing this logic in a wide variety of ways. We're about to employ it in the firm trying to maximize profits by looking at the margin, but it factors into your life all the time. So with the teeth brushing, just to kind of complete this, look bad for Russ and disrupt class. Maybe he thought he could get here. It'll be less disruptive if Russ is still setting up the cameras or whatever. So that minute of brushing made sense to just go. So this morning, today, if the marginal cost of brushing is greater than the marginal benefit, don't brush. That is the efficient thing to do. Economic efficiency. We're not saying don't ever brush again, right? We're not saying don't ever brush again, but this morning, given the circumstances, don't brush. And you are being economically efficient with that decision. Okay, so questions or comments there? All right, so what we left off with last time, in fact, I think I'll spare you the graph. You got that in your notes. Let's just start off with short run versus long run. So short run, we've seen these words used, but we haven't really defined them. Long run. Short run versus long run. So we have a very specific way we do it, and We did a little bit of this before when we talked about our professor who was losing $20,000 of economic profit. Because the professor lost money that month, did that mean, it was Chuck, right? Did that mean Chuck should close down the gym after 1 month of operations? No, right? So it was in a short enough amount of time that Chuck should maybe hang in there, try to do some new advertising, adjust price, adjust expenses, right? And then the next month and the next month. So that's what we want to think about here is what is the appropriate amount of time? So the first thing is that there is no specific time. There is not a general amount of time for all firms. There's not a general amount of time. It's not like 1 year, 2 years, or whatever. It's very specific to the firm. And so the definition for the short run, so the short run is a period of time in which at least one resource is fixed. A period of time in which at least one resource is fixed. In other words, you can't change it. So for example, suppose you have a photography business. Photography in the basement of your home. You kind of have a home business. So you're a small business owner. You do like high school pictures, right? And maybe some weddings and special events. New baby is born, so you bring mom and the family for new pictures, that type of thing. What is the short run for our photography business? What is the short run? A period of time in which at least one resource is fixed. Let's kind of mentally do a little resource list here. You're running a photography business. Tell me some of the things that our photographer needs to do the business. Jay?
So for myself, I do photography as well, so I need lights, I need a backdrop.
Okay, so you got the backdrops, you got the lights. Other people jump in, what else? A camera, right? Deontay?
Clientele.
The what?
Clientele.
Clientele is not the resource though,
You need
right?
business cards.
So we're wanting to identify the resource. So the customers is this side of the equation so that we can get some sales. And I'm not denying that you do need that for to stay in business, right? You got to be able to have that, but it's not a resource. What else, Kalen?
Photo paper.
Photo paper, yeah. So you got some sort of photo paper. You got that big umbrella, the silver umbrella or whatever you see on the lights and shows, right? The camera is probably a computer, or maybe you have to hook it to a computer to do some stuff. Jay?
What was that? SD card.
The SD cards, yeah, memory chips. All right, so we kind of got at least a little feel here. So the short run for our photographer is a period of time at least in which at least one resource is fixed. Of all the things we just talked about, how long would it take you to get another one of those? How long would it take you to get another umbrella, another light, another camera, another computer, another SD card? How much time would it take, like I need this, from the time you order it to the time you get it, how much time are we talking probably at most?
3 days.
3 days?
Well,
Some of that stuff could be specialty equipment though, possibly, right? So maybe a couple weeks, maybe at most. So here, the short run, long run break line might be as little as 2 weeks. So for our photographer, if you can replace anything you're doing in your business in as little as 2 weeks, that is the short run, long run distinction, right? So you can very quickly be making decisions for your business. You're not stuck with something. Let me give you another example before we write some of this on the board. Suppose you make tractors like John Deere, big tractors. And you want to think about how much time would it take you to open up a new plant in Ottawa, Kansas. Ottawa looks like a great place to start building tractors. And you decide at your corporate headquarters in Illinois that you're going to open up a new tractor business in Ottawa, Kansas. How long would you think that process would take from the time you decided to do it to the time you have up and running production making tractors in Ottawa, Kansas? A year? I think at least a year. Think about, is that a big building? Right? We got to do earthwork and construction. Do we have to maybe have an architect look at things? Do I have to go to these are things I wouldn't expect most of you to know. Do I have to go to the Ottawa City Council and ask for a permit and licensing and show the plans and designs? Yeah, so it's probably a minimum of 2 years. I was a real estate developer prior to full-time teaching, and so I was going for those permits and coming up, working with architects for apartment buildings and other things. And it's probably a minimum of 2 years. And then you're hiring labor, and you got a fairly complex operation. So the point is that the short run for something like that might be 2 years before we could actually get more up and running to change what our current situation is. Okay, so that is short run versus long run. It depends on the company and the circumstances they have. So photography and basement might be at most 2 weeks to replace all resources. We jump on Amazon, we jump on maybe some specialty stores, whatever. Example number 2, if we're making tractors, so John Deere, nothing runs like a deer, John Deere tractor making, manufacturing, might be at least 2 years. Might be 2 years to replace or / expand all resources. So one company has a 2-year long run, short run distinction, and the other one has just 2 weeks. Okay, any questions or comments there? All right, so I'm going to put down the definition for long run. So long run is a period of time in which all resources can vary. So if we look at kind of a timeline moving forward, the short run is the period of time moving forward where something is fixed. So this is measuring time. A period of time, at least one thing is fixed. I like at least because there can be multiple things, but at least one input. I'll use the word input this time, so you got to be interchangeable between resource and input and factors of production. At least one input fixed. And then in the long run, we hit this break point here, whatever that is, a time period, I don't want to get too fancy, but T1, and this is the long run. Oops, I can change everything. every resource can change. Notice that we're not talking about dollars at all. This is just strictly talking about my production process. I need people, I need a machine, I need a building, and I'm making pizza, right? I'm making photographs, I'm making tractors. It's a physical production process that we're looking at here. But that has important implications for the dollars now as well. So, let's look at what this means over time. So, implications for cost curves. All right, so let's draw a nice big graph. We'll just have one here. And just draw an average total cost curve somewhere on your graph, kind of in this little bit to the left here. So this is the one we've been drawing. It always bottoms out, it's bowl-shaped, has a minimum point. And now we want to tell the story of what's really going on with this cost curve. It's a short-run cost curve. So for this one, let's say we're starting a business out of our basement. We've got a new gadget that we're making. There's a piece of equipment that makes it easier to keep your fishing lures down, called a dipsy diver. And so you've managed to assemble these. You kind of came up with a cool idea. And you've been working out of your garage, and your garage is about 2,000 square feet. So right now, the size of your garage, your capital is you're in your small space of 2,000 square foot garage. And if you're producing 20 of your dipsies, so this is your dipsy diver. If you're producing 20 of these per day, you're able to make these dipsy divers at $3 each. Now, different times of the year, the fishing is on or the fishing's off, and so notice that if we move to the left of this, in my garage, it ends up being a little more costly because I have my garage and this extra space and maybe some machines or something, and so that brings up the average total cost to like $320 or something, right? And also, when I started to get my business growing, these things are really getting popular. I started to get orders that were bringing me out here. So at 23. Again, my costs go up. Remember with my making the hamburgers on the grill and I added more russes, what happened eventually? As I kept adding more russes to my fixed grill top, we got less done, less productive, less hamburgers. Why? Because the russes were starting to bump into each other, less specialization, all of that stuff. So we got the same thing going on with our garage. As our production levels start to climb, we start to get inefficient or not as cost effective. So, after the last year, we'd always have, sometimes the orders would fall down to 18, but lately, it seems like it's been 23, 24, 25, right? We've been staying over here. We're like, I think I'm onto something. I think people are really liking my product. And so I think I'm going to go rent some space. I'm going to go rent some space in Ottawa and get into a bigger facility. If I could have a 4,000 square foot facility, now that my orders are starting to get up here a little ways and into this 25 range, if I do that, I found that I can decrease my cost. So my average total cost with let's call it a 3,000 square foot building, looks like this. When you draw this, try to draw this graph, this line above that fat dot of the minimum. So now I have room to grow, and my new minimum point here is at 32 units. At 32 units, my average cost has come down to $2.70. So 30 cents per unit's pretty good for me, because I'm still able to sell them for the same price I was doing before. But now that I've gotten into a bigger facility and I'm doing a larger volume of business, I'm able to bring down my costs. So in that profit formula of price minus average total cost times quantity, I'm making more money, right? Price is still, I'm selling this product for $6, let's say, just to make up a number. So suppose this is $6. If my average cost is falling from $3 to $2.70, am I making more money? Say yes. Yes. And then of course I'm making more units. So that's really making profits go up, right? So I'm increasing my capacity, my average cost is falling, and my prices are staying constant. I'm becoming very profitable all of a sudden with this little venture, and it's going great. And so it becomes so great, though, that a good problem to have is that we're like, oh, we continue to get more and more orders. Now we're out here at 40 and 42 and 43. And what I find is that my 3,000 square foot space, we start bumping into each other again, right? I hired more people, I've got more machines, and so now my cost is starting to go up when my business is going up. So now, what do? I go find a bigger space. I re-optimize, because in the long run, I'm not trapped in the garage. I'm not trapped in the 2,000 square foot space. I'm not trapped in the 3,000 square foot space. I can bump it up to whatever it needs to be profitable, assuming that my business is going to stay stable. Am I taking on a risk? Well, yeah. Let's go back to the 3,000. The reason I did this here is if my business falls back to the old levels, what am I going to be kicking myself about? What's true at 20 when I've now moved into the orange 3,000 square foot space? What's true at 20? Javian? It's more expensive. How do you know that? I don't think everybody here knows that, but you're right. Tell me how you would know on an exam or a test question or a homework problem that it's more expensive at 20 when I'm in the orange. I just want to know the mechanics, because I don't think everybody is seeing the mechanics that you're seeing. So how do you know it's more expensive?
Because you're not reaching, you're learning like the max potential, you're not close to that, you're actually like producing less than what you could.
Okay, we're producing less, and how do I calculate the average total cost in the orange 3,000 square foot space? How do I calculate or know graphically, how do I know graphically what the average total cost of producing 20 units is? What do I need to do? Kaylin?
Probably need to lower your.
No, let's not get any lower. I want to use this graph. Janaya? Put the dot up. So I'm going to go up to the average total cost curve, but not this one, because I'm no longer in my garage, right? I am in my 3,000 square foot space, and so the average total cost in the short run with my new 3,000 square foot facility, the average total cost, I go up to the average total cost curve, hang a left, and each unit is being pretty expensive, right? Is where Javian was earlier, compared to what I would have been had I stayed in my smaller space. Questions on that? Is that starting to sink in a little bit? All right, so same thing's going on here again then. If we are able to maintain business here at this 40 level, then maybe once again I'm able to get a little bit bigger and get into a 4,000 square foot space. As long as business is staying at 40 and 45 and 50, as long as business is staying out here, then I'm minimizing my cost compared to the 3,000 square foot orange space and where I started off, the 2,000 square foot garage. But if business falls off again, I'm really in trouble if I have to pay the rent on a big building. At 20, now my average total cost would be up here if my business falls off, and I might be going out of business eventually, right? If I've committed and my business is gone for good and I'm only doing 20 because a competitor came in and started competing with me and I thought I was going to be doing 40 all the time, but now I'm back to doing 20. Maybe I can resize and get out of my lease agreement here for the green space, but maybe I can't very quickly. All right, so all of these are short-run cost curves where at least one resource is fixed. The resource I'm talking about is the building, which is fairly likely to be your one resource that's hard to change. It might be hard to build a building, buy a building, or rent. You might be in a lease agreement, so you have a 3-year lease, so you're kind of stuck with the building financially at some short amount of time. But as you move out, we might be able to start to bring these costs down. All right, questions on that? So we have a word for this, an important econ term that you'll hear used, even in not outside of econ class, and that's called economies of scale. The economies of scale, and I'll define it in a second. Here's what you might not want to draw on your papers, but let me draw it on mine. I'll use red here. See how this goes. There's an infinite number of square feet I could pick, right? Between 2,000 and 3,000, there's 2,500, right? So there's a whole bunch of them. So I could start to draw in all of them. And if I do, all the infinite number of sizes I could pick starts to outline. If we connected the outer envelope of all of those, it shows you the long run average cost curve. These are all short run curves. This is the long run. So on your paper, what I'd encourage you to do is draw something like I did with the blue line, but only touch your 3 that you have on your paper. But conceptually, there's a whole bunch of them, and so this is the long run average total cost curve. And these are all short run curves. Okay, so let's define something here. So, note. I use my blue. So the long run average total cost curve is the outer envelope of all the possible short run average total cost curves. And then let's define economies of scale. Economies of scale is a situation where as you increase the scale of production, which is varying all resources. So increase Q. As you increase the scale of production, long run average total costs fall. And that's a good thing. Good thing for your business, assuming you can keep the business. So the blue curve, basically over this range of what we're showing here, there's economies of scale going on throughout. When you're a small business, are you able to always produce 45? No, because if you produce 45 and there's only 20 buyers, that was a dumb thing to do, right? So as your business grows, you might be able to have advantages of economies of scale. So now we're starting to think here, well, why do we have corporations? Why do we have McDonald's? Why do we have McDonald's? Why can they produce stuff so cheaply? Because why? Because it's fake. Yeah, a few rumors, conspiracy theory there. But they're able to take advantage of economies of scale. So why do we have these big corporations out there? This is probably why. Why do we not have as many mom and pop hardware stores and instead we have Lowe's and Home Depot? Now you guys know why. This is it. Why do we not have mom and pop Main Street selling stuff and we have Walmart? This is it. Economies of scale. So the larger the scale of production, Walmart is able to outprice mom and pop Main Street. Not because they hate them and they're trying to put them out of business. It's just that economies of scale exist. It's possible now to get costs driven down low and offer lower prices that ultimately may put mom and pop shop out of business. Economies of scale, right? And so, does every industry look like this? No. How many haircut places do we have in Ottawa? 2?
I think it's 2.
Yeah, and you guys don't know Ottawa as well, but just places like beauty salons or just haircut, barber. There's a few barbers that just more or less do men's hair. I would guess there's probably 15. 15 individual places. Now, you guys have heard of Great Clips, right? So why isn't Great Clips everywhere? Well, there isn't economies of scale with Great Clips. It's possible for mom and pop Main Street beauty salon to have similar cost structure compared to Great Clips. In fact, Great Clips' business model is a little bit different, right? You can go in without an appointment and you can kind of cycle through. So they have some other little things, but their cost advantage is nothing like Home Depot versus mom and pop hardware store, right? With the ability to purchase large volumes of hammers compared to mom and pop that can only buy small amounts of hammers. So the hardware business has a lot of economies of scale. The haircut industry doesn't. And so we don't see a huge conglomerate of haircut places. Mom and pop industries continue to thrive because there's not economies of scale in those industries. So not everything is set up to be big business will work better, but many things are. If we can mass produce things, it can come at a lot lower cost. Okay, questions or comments there? All right, so one last thing, I didn't want to disrupt this graph here, but you can also have diseconomies of scale. And so the full long run average cost curve can potentially take on, there's usually 3 phases that we look at. So let's put 3 phases of long run average total cost. I'm going to stick to a graph, but this time you can bring it down like we did, but then maybe let it flatten out and then maybe even turn up a little bit. So the long run average total cost curve, like in theory, might look like that. And where it flattens out is all that I showed here, because that might be the relevant range of production. And so this is the area of economies of scale. But, you know, could Home Depot and Lowe's get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger? Well, the benefits ultimately kind of wipe out themselves. There's not any more benefit from a cost standpoint for it going flat. So there'd be this kind of flat spot. Hopefully you guys can make it more flat. I'm not sure how flat I was here, but so this maybe flattens out, which would mean no economies of scale. You're not reducing cost anymore over, once we get up from Q1 and then Q2, between 0 and Q1, if Q1's 1,000 units, so up to 1,000 units, yeah, that was great. The company was able to drive down costs by getting bigger. But eventually, there was no more benefit to getting bigger. It kind of flattened out in terms of economies of scale. And then over here, where it turns up on us, we could run into diseconomies of scale, which almost seems a little bit strange. But some big companies struggle when they get too big. Some big companies struggle when they get too big, and they find that they're a little wasteful. Can you think of why that might be? Why would some companies get so big that they're actually not as efficient as they were when they were a little bit smaller?
Not good management.
Management is usually the key thing, yeah. So, you know, you've got this hierarchy where I started in my basement, right? And I knew all the employees, and we were small, and then we hired more employees, and then we hired more employees, and pretty soon I needed to hire a manager and create different departments or whatever, and I got a little bit separated. And so a lot of times, this could be a management constraint. So diseconomies of scale, a lot of times would be management problems. We've got middle managers trying to figure out what to do that's not doing it the way the original owner would do, right? It's hard to convey information through the hierarchy from the owner or the top dog CEO down to the vice presidents, down to the middle managers, down to the line managers, right? How does that information get processed through management? That can run into that constraint. Okay, questions or comments there? All right. So let's wrap up this this portion with a distinction on cost curves shifting and moving. The things that move cost curves are basically the things that shifted supply curves. So we can kind of think of this as a connection between supply shifters and cost shifters. So let's call this average cost shifters and supply shift connection. Kind of connecting the dots here, connection. So let's start by drawing some sort of average total cost curve. I always like to have you put a big fat dot right at the minimum point, just as a little reminder that it does bottom out at some place. And then remember, we've got our good old supply curve. And give me a good, any good, any good, any good. Soap. I kind of heard some, but I didn't hear what it was. The first one I heard clearly was soap. All right, I don't know where soap came from, but all right, we're a soap seller now. And so this is our cost of soap producing. But in the soap market, you know, we had a supply and demand curve, and then we learned that we can sell our soap for $5. All right, so that was kind of the supply thing from chapter 3. And then we talked about some of those supply shifters. And so the price of resources was probably number 1. So ATC shifters, which is really going to be a replication of the supply shifters, but the price of resources. So if we make goat milk soap and the price of goat milk goes up, then that's going to cause our supply curve to shift to the left, but it's pretty easy here. Is this thing going to shift up or down if goat milk goes up? It's going to go up, right? So at each level, so whether we think about producing 30 bars of soap, if we produce 15 bars of soap, or we produce 45 bars of soap, if goat milk goes up, then we're going to have a supply or an average total cost curve shift up vertically by that amount. So the price of resources. So suppose there's an increase in the price of goat milk for our goat soap. Soap. Oh, I did soup there for a second. So soap. We probably could do goat soup. After we're done milking them, we can kill them and have some goat meat in our soup. Maybe we could do joint product. All right, so that would move up, right? So that would shift. This means it would shift up by that amount. Okay, taxes. So an increase in taxes will lead to an increase in average total cost of doing business. A shift up. Same thing we saw here when taxes came in. We could reflect that with a shift up of the supply curve. And so let's put S2 and S1 just to kind of think of what we were doing with the supply curve. Now we have our costs going up here in this world, our cost of doing business. Number 3, an increase in regulations. If the government tells us we have to keep our books a certain way, or we have to check our exhaust system, pay for a licensing fee, collect survey feedback data to give to the government on our app, all of that stuff costs money. So an increase in regulations leads to an increase in average total cost. So government regulations. And then the last one is an increase in technology. We come up with a new way of doing things, a new device, a new process. What happens to my average total cost with the development of a new technology in my goat making, my soap making business? It goes down, right? So costs are going to go down when technology increases. So a technological advance causes a decrease in average total cost. So we'd shift that average total cost curve down. All right. Questions or comments there? Make sure that was a 1 to a 2 going up. All right, so last topic for this before we head into our video, sunk cost. So sunk costs are costs that are really irrelevant to the decision making. So sunk costs are costs that cannot be recovered. And are therefore irrelevant to a decision. Another way of thinking about that is that it's not variable cost. There's no way to recover them. They're gone. And so as human beings, economists have found out that people do weigh these in kind of irrationally. My sunk costs. So if you bought season tickets to the Chiefs and you just dropped $1,500 and you get to go to what, 7 home games, 8 home games, so you get to go to 8 home games, and you're 3 deep into the season, and game number 4 comes up, and you're like, oh, I have to go, I already paid for the tickets. That type of mentality is that it's a sunk cost. Now, and that might not be the best example, because if you have an extra Chiefs ticket, what might you be able to do? Sell it, right? But maybe you won't get the price. Let's say the Chiefs, let's tell a sad story. The Chiefs are in the tank. Maybe we're at game 15 and the Chiefs have won one win after 15 games, and you can't go to the next game. Is your ticket worth the $100 that you paid for it originally, or the average cost, right? If you bought a season ticket package, it's that. Good luck trying to unload that. Maybe you'll get $20 or $10 or something, but the point is that as you calculate, should I go to the game today or not, and let's just say that it averaged out to be $100 a ticket, people will think, oh, I have to, otherwise I'll be wasting my money. Wrong. You'll be wasting your time and possibly more money if you don't reevaluate what's going on. So the marginal cost, again, of going to the Chiefs is the gas and time that you're going to do and what you might be giving up, and maybe you have some other opportunities to go. But the actual ticket price is gone, assuming that the ticket's worthless. It would be $100, or maybe you can recover 20 of it. You've got $80 worth of sunk costs. Don't worry about it. So businesses do this too, especially executives. We've already paid for this. We have to go down this path for product development. No, you don't. That money is a sunk cost. It's not recoverable through doing that, so don't let it enter your marginal analysis of marginal cost and marginal benefit. Jay?
It's kind of like what you were saying is actually kind of true, because the Texans, like for us, it was the Houston Texans, like they're trash, but the tickets now are going for a lot more cheaper, and there's people that were like literally outside of the stadium going like, hey, here's a ticket for like $10, and like people are just
Because they did
giving
show
these
up.
tickets. Literally, like people are giving tickets
Giving
away.
tickets away, yeah.
Like,
So that's the point here, is that don't bring into account stuff that you can't get back. If you can't recover the cost, it doesn't belong in your decision today. And so that's called the sunk cost fallacy. All right, pull out a piece of paper. You guys are going to get some, you got a little in-class assignment today for points. The special topic chapter is on resources. And there's a famous economist named Julian Simon who made a bet. And basically, there has been people since the dawn of time that said, oh, I understand economics. There's limited resources and you're going to run out of them. You know? How many people, we got to start saving energy today because we're running out. We've only got so much coal. We only got so much oil. We only got so much solar. We have limited resources, right? And so Thomas Malthus back in the 1800s, he made a prediction that we were basically going to starve. Economics was pretty dismal because back in the day, if you're a subsistence farmer, you would make babies. And then if you had economic growth and you had more money, you made more babies because you made the farm bigger. And so if population growth ends up exceeding economic growth, income growth, if you will, then we're all going to be poor and starving, right? If population continues to go faster than that. So this whole idea of resource exhaustion is what this special topics chapter on. This is just a short little 5-minute video that'll kind of highlight this bet that Julian Simon did. And so I want you to take 2 different points. About halfway through, you should have something written down of something you thought was interesting, and then on the second half. So just write 2 things down, first name, last name. You'll be turning these in, and then we'll have a little discussion after it's done. All right, here we go. Take notes. You should have 2 different notes.
2 American professors bet $1,000 on a question with stakes that couldn't be higher. Would the Earth run out of resources to sustain a growing human population? One of them was Stanford biologist Paul Ehrlich, who wrote the best-selling 1968 book, The Population Bomb. The global population had grown rapidly since World War II, and Ehrlich predicted that millions would starve to death as the population increased faster than the food supply. He drew on the ideas of 18th century economist Thomas Malthus and related work from the 20th century. Malthus had posited that population growth, if unchecked over time, would always outpace food supply. Through the 1970s, it seemed like Ehrlich was right. Famines, pollution, and political unrest had many concerned that humanity was on the brink of such a crisis, and some governments considered and even implemented policies to limit population growth. Betting against Ehrlich was Julian Simon, a professor of business and economics. He analyzed historic data from around the world and found no correlation between a growing population and a decrease in standards of living. In fact, he found the opposite. He argued that Ehrlich's work, and that of Malthus before him, was based on theoretical calculations, while the real-world data told a different story. But then he departed from the data himself, claiming human ingenuity would always find alternatives to compensate for diminishing resources. If that seems overly optimistic to you, well, you're not alone. Ehrlich and other experts found Simon's claims preposterous. In June 1980, Simon wrote a scathing article for Science magazine that incited a heated debate of published articles between the 2 men. Simon said he should have placed a wager against Ehrlich years before, when Ehrlich ventured that, quote, England would not exist in the year 2000, unquote. Later that year, Simon called Ehrlich a false prophet and challenged him to a bet. Their feud also touched on the debate about whether to prioritize environmental protections or economic growth, a key issue in the American presidential race between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. After some debate, they set the final terms: $200 on the price of each of 5 metals. If the price of the metal decreased or held steady over the next decade, Simon won. If the price increased, Ehrlich won. Wait, what? Weren't we talking about overpopulation and famine? What could the price of metals possibly have to do with that? Well, the reality is that the price of metals may not have been the best choice. Many factors impact these prices that have nothing to do with overpopulation. But their reasoning was as follows. Metals are finite natural resources, used in all sorts of manufacturing. Ehrlich believed a growing population would consume such finite resources, and scarcity would drive the prices up. Simon thought humanity would find substitutes for the metals and the prices would stay stable or even decrease. So, what happened? The world population continued to increase over the next 10 years, but the price of all 5 metals decreased, making Simon the clear winner of a bet that may not have been a great proxy for the question they were debating anyway. As for the question itself, today their focus on overpopulation represents a snapshot of history. Our understanding of what causes starvation and famine has progressed. We have the resources to support a growing human population, but we're currently failing to distribute those resources equitably. and changing that should be our priority. And we no longer see population size as a primary cause of environmental degradation and climate change, or limiting population growth as a viable solution to these problems. Rather, experts largely agree that our focus should be on replacing unsustainable technologies and practices with sustainable ones, and that economic growth and environmental protections don't have to be at odds. In October 1990, Julian Simon received a check from Paul Ehrlich. There was no note. So how can we feed every person on the planet a healthy diet? And how can we do so without further damaging that planet? Find out with these videos on the future of food.
Okay, we're here to get your thoughts down on that. Okay, let's see. We left off with Anna. What was your number again, Jay? 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Chris, what did you write down?
Well, I said that Simon was a tyrannical. One thing that was interesting to me, he said that England wouldn't be existing in 2000.
Okay, so the claim from the other guy, not Simon,
Yeah.
that England wouldn't even exist in 2000. So how many times have we heard Miami is going to fall into the ocean, or other things with either climate change and some other things? There's been these predictions over the years. Remember, some of those arguments were coming back from the 60s. So people have been making those sorts of claims. And so Simon's claim is that human ingenuity, the human being, will look for substitutes, and we've talked about the importance of substitutes to overcome those challenges as we go. And the bet there was with those precious metals. So let's take a look at that for a second. On your papers, if you want, just draw a quick little graph here. And just do kind of good old supply and demand. And we'll kind of show the argument. So this would have been 1968 gold prices. So let's just say this is gold for one of them. And so an increase in population shifts what curve? Demand or supply? Remember that for your supply shifters? An increase in the population of people. What's going to go up? Demand or supply? Demand, good. So as we have more, the city of Ottawa grows, the demand for pizza grows, right? So a population boom says this. So here's population. So increase in population. And so this looks pretty bad that, oh my gosh, as the supply of gold looks the way it goes, we're going to run out of gold. We're going to run out of oil. We're going to run out of natural resources. We must conserve. We must conserve. We must come up with energy efficient means to save our resources. You guys have heard the argument. That's the way the argument goes. But what Simon's pointing out is that when gold prices go up, let's say from 200, well, whatever, let's just use 20, from 20 to 30, would it be profitable to find a substitute for using gold? Yeah. And so people start mining gold, but they also start developing new technologies that would act as a substitute for gold. So that could be an increase or decrease in supply. So as we find new substitutes, that demand curve would go down. So we have maybe some innovation, let's call it S2. So this is innovation in gold exploration. Another good one would be like fracking and other ways to get resources out of the ground. But then also we start to have, let's call this D3, innovation, finding substitutes, fake gold possibly, or other metals that might work. Finding subs for gold. If people start to perceive another product as a good substitute for gold, it shrinks back. And so that picture that they were showing ultimately over time was we started at point A, and then over a long period of time, over the long run, we moved into point B and we saw prices falling. So that was the picture in the graph, thinking about these other things that a lot of other people don't. When biologists that he was having the debate with and the bet with, they kind of take as given that the resource is fixed. And that population will go up and price will go up and the world's going to come to an end. But Simon's argument is that the human mind, through technology and innovation and economic incentives, through profits or other ways, will develop substitutes and new ways of getting the good itself such that we won't have calamity. So that's the good news. The world won't end with that. So that's our resource exhaustion. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Go Bengals. Do we have any LA fans in here?